guys, welcome back to another video on my channel, and today I've got something a little different for you. I was offered a 30-day trial of a art program called Clipstudio Paint, and there are two versions to this program. One is Clipstudio Pro, and what's the other one called? And the other one basically is more for kind of animation and 3D modelling and things, and that isn't something I've ever done, so I'm not really ever going to touch on. So we're looking at paint. So when you start the program, this is what you get. You also get up to 10 gigs of free storage with them if you buy one of their packages. I haven't, obviously. I'm on a 30-day free trial. I have been playing around with this briefly, so I've already had a kind of rough feel to it, and I've already kind of made my mind up on my thoughts about where this program sits in the market, and what I do compared to what some other artists do. So there's graphic artists, novel artists, there's comic strip artists, manga, 3D modelling artists. So for me, I'll let you know at the end of this. We're just going to do a really quick little pastel painting in this, just to kind of give it a run through and see what it can do, and I'll let you know what my thoughts are on the program at the end, and let me know in the comments below what you think, or go and try it for yourself. I've put the link in the description below, so you can go and have a look and see, download the program, register for the free trial, and try it yourself and see what you think. Okay, so we're going to click on Paint, which will load the paint section of the software. As you can see, we've got X and Pro. X is for the kind of modelling and kind of like 3D stuff. It's more set up for that sort of thing, whereas the Pro is more for just kind of illustration and design and painting, basically. So we're going to click on Pro because that's what I've got. It's going to moan at me about my trial. Right, and here we go. We have a blank piece of paper and one rather large set of display. So obviously there is an awful lot on the screen. So the few things that we can see straight away that we are used to seeing in most programs is obviously we have a navigation window at the top. We have layer property box, which lets us do various bits and pieces, and we have our layers box. That's pretty obvious, not much really to think about there. This is an assets box where you've got patterns, gradients, textures, manga materials, 3D compositions, stuff that you've downloaded specifically and imported into the program. We don't really need that, do we? No, we don't. We can hide that one. Right. Can't do anything because I don't actually have anything selected. Let's see. Subtool. Objects. Tool properties and the subtools. So I'm assuming that's going to be brushes, and that's going to be brush properties, and then we've got brush size, and then we've got color picker. So obviously I can resize this if I want to. It's a bit pointless. Ooh, a 2000 size brush. We'll get to that in a minute. That's going to be exciting. It probably covers the whole page. Right, so up here we've got obviously zoom, move, operation, which is what we're currently in, move layer, selection, auto selects, eyedropper, and then we've got our brush groups. So we've got pen, pencil, brush, airbrush, decoration. I'll show you what that is later, it's quite fun. Eraser, and our blending modes. Then down here we have our standard fill bucket, gradients, figures, which is basically line, framing boards for if you're doing comic strips, various rulers, text, speech bubbles, they call it balloons, we call them bubbles, and correct lines, so basically framing, and obviously your two counter boxes. So at the top we have our file, edit, animation, layer options. The nice thing about this is you can use either a raster layer or a vector layer. Now I do a lot of graphic design works creating wedding stationery, that's my main business, and vector layers are really useful because it gives every object an outline so that it basically is visible to certain computer programs and printers, especially if you're doing things like paper cuts, laser paper cuts, or foiling is another one. And the printers I use require everything that I do to be in vector if they are doing things like foiling, especially in the paper cuts. So that's quite useful for me. I noticed here that if you see along here at the top of your layers, you've got new raster layer and new vector layer. Obviously new layer folders, the kind of standard things that you get. In the case of most art programs, like for example ArtRage and Procreate, you're actually working in raster for the majority of it. I can explain the difference between raster and vector, but it's long and boring, and I might do a demo on that at another time if people really want to know what the difference is between it. But for the sake of being long-windedly technical, raster is what most art programs paint in. Photoshop will do either, Illustrator will do either, Corel can do it, but it's really fiddly. So Painter can do it, but it's really fiddly. And besides the fact that unless you're actually doing proper clipped shapes, you don't really need to be doing vector shapes. The way that you work in fine art, it's not really required, to be honest with you. Right, so we are going to be looking at our brushes. So we've got pen, and in the pen subtool menu we have pen or we have marker. You can see when I click between the two, we've got different brushes. So G pen, mapping pen, calligraphy, textured pen, effect line, real G pen, dump pen, and markers. We've got all sorts of things you expect, including a felt pen. Yay, go felt pens. I swear they're making a comeback. And then in pencil, which doesn't look like a pencil because it looks suspiciously like a piece of chalk, we have our pencils and our pastels. And then in brush we have watercolour, realistic watercolour, thick paint, and India ink. Now for those that follow Steve's channel as well, your thick paint really, yeah, let's put in a new layer. Why is this not working? What have I done this time? This is how much I hate this program already. Oh wait, that's a blender, that'll be why. That's better. Don't pick the blenders by accident. It's not a brush. Well, it is a brush, but it's not a brush, if you know what I mean. It's saying that's thick paint. I don't know. I'm not totally convinced. I'm gonna scroll in. I can't really see much. I mean, it doesn't really give you much in the way of texture, so how can you say that's thick paint? Should we try the oil paint? That's... yeah, okay. Let's put another colour on top of that so we can see maybe. I think the blending's a little flat in this. It's like no... Go back to the flat brush. Yeah, the blending's almost too even, if you know what I mean. Probably not. You know, when you blend, if you drag the brush through, you tend to still see streaks of the colour you're blending through within the colour that you're blending with. So for example, if I did put the brush down here and then dragged it through, it would drag parts of the blue into the red. Instead, what I'm getting is the red already pre-mixed with the blue from where I've put it on top, and as I drag it out it becomes more red. Just a little odd. That's not very blendy at all. Okay, let's try the gouache blender. What does that give us? That is... what is that? That's a gouache blender? What? What is that doing? It's like adding texture and scrubbing out my paint. It'd be like if I'd taken like a piece of sandpaper to my dried paint. That is weird. Who invented these brushes? Obviously not an artist. Yeah, okay. We are going to delete that layer. Yes, I want to delete that layer. Okay, also for the sake of those that follow Steve's channel, we will have a look at the realistic watercolour. So you can get a... let's do a nice blue colour. Good luck. Should we make this brush bigger? How big is the 2000 brush? So big you can't see it. Can I zoom out? Whoa! That's a big brush. Yeah, I don't think we'll ever actually have the need for that. What size is my paper? My paper is 1600 by 1200. So, yeah, that is a big brush. That is a rather big brush. Up here is an undo button. Let's... yeah, it's a bit laggy, but that's not really a surprise when you're using a brush of that size. Let's take it down to 5. Yeah, it's still laggy, but interesting. Wow, well, as those of you know and use Art Rage on a regular basis, the size of brush is still an ongoing issue on the mobile version. And although you can get around it on the desktop version by typing in, actually having a panel with like this with the preset sizes of brushes is quite handy. You can do it in Art Rage by basically setting up a different size for each brush and setting up like 100 different custom brushes of the same brush but in different sizes. If you ever want to bother or have the time to do it rather than just over typing the brush size. You're cool. Let's go back to something sensible, shall we? Right. So that is the round watercolour brush. Obviously it has some texture. It's quite smooth on the lines and the texture's really weird. I'm not really sure what to make of that texture. Let's give it a different colour. Doesn't really blend. It's more like I'm just going to overlay this colour on top. Yeah, okay. What else have we got? Soft bleed. Oh, that's more interesting. That's pretty. It's kind of like a... we have bled. it's still really overlaying colours. It doesn't really have it doesn't really blend. Oh, we can add water. Yeah, I suppose that kind of works. Yeah. Oh, probably want to maybe play with the opacity a little bit. You can see all that down here. What else have we got? We've got the textured. Textured blender. That's quite nice. I do still feel like I'm kind of. It's more like it's scrubbing over the top and rather than blending. It's like it's not. Yeah. I mean, if I work at this some, like this, I'll just work on this a wee bit. It helps if you kind of lift off and then retouch the surface every now and then rather than doing a continuous drag. It doesn't seem to like doing a continuous drag out. Okay. Well, you can kind of get a nice texture doing that, but it is quite a bit of work to do it. I mean, I hate to count the number of brush strokes it's actually taking me to do that. But it is kind of looking alright. Okay, watercolour flat brush is flat, and the rough wash. Ooh, okay. I'm not really sure I'd call that a rough wash, just because it's got jagged edges. Yep. I mean, I do love the fact that when you layer over, it is producing, you know, what the colour would be if you overlaid one with another, and you can make up some really lovely darker versions of the colour that you're actually working with by overlaying it. Now it just looks like I've bled all over the page. Maybe I should not have picked that sort of colour. Let's have a look. This is their other watercolour section, which is their non-realistic. I'm not really sure what the difference is between their non-realistic, so let's have a look. Okay, we're going to up this to 100, so... Okay, so we start off light and go into colour. We don't really... we're not really overlaying like we were with the realistic. I can literally just paint over the top. Okay, dense watercolour. Not really sure what the difference is there. Very similar. Paint and apply. Oh, that's messing with my eyesight. What on earth? It's like I've gone blurred. It's like I've lost my vision. I mean, I'm losing my vision anyway. I have keratoconus, but I mean, seriously, what on earth? Oh, that's not nice. Don't like, no likey. Get rid of it. Oh, that's just not nice. Right, running colour edge wet. This sounds interesting. Oh, that's nice. So you can kind of build up the colour, which is quite nice. I can see how... Let's just play with that for a second. Let's go for a kind of grey. Up, up, up. Yeah, okay, let's make our brush bigger. have a bit of fun here. Right, let's do have a bit of fun with this. Let's do a bit of grey. Let's make it smaller. What do we reckon? A few clouds? I want to make the bottom of these clouds slightly darker. Down here. I don't really have any sun direction at the moment, so. Okay, right, let's take it into the lighter grey. And yes, I know in watercolour that would be totally unfeasible because you can't paint white on top, but this is a painting program, so get with the program, people. Right, I'll take this even lighter. Yeah, lighten them up. Let's make this slightly smaller as well so we can concentrate on what we're doing. And yeah, I know these clouds they are looking a little similar, but that's because I don't really have any reference photos to work from. I'm just kind of making this up. I don't normally like making up clouds. Let's go back to our grey. Actually, in the grand scheme of things, that's pretty nice, actually. I mean, it's pretty soft. We'll go in with some... Let's go in with some... in with a smaller version of this brush and see if we can actually add some details. I also need to make this a little bit lighter. Not paying much attention to my stills and clouds, obviously. Okay, right, we want to add some definition because these clouds are lovely, but yeah, they're a little too wispy. So can I get more definition by using a smaller brush? Yes, I can. I don't want to, yeah, Okay, let's do the white, because I'm not making mountains. But yeah. Okay. So if I wanted to, I could add definition by making the brush a lot smaller. By doing so, it's giving me a lot more definition and something I can work with. I'm just flicking out these now because they're annoying me. Okay, so that's interesting. So we know that we've got a nice soft brush, and that one, to recap, is called the Running Colour Edge. What's it called? Running Colour Edge Water something or another. It's got a long name, but Running Colour Edge basically. Let's give ourselves something else to play with. Right, let's go back to a blue. Oh, that one's got texture. It's got that nasty, unfocused. I don't know what it is, don't blame me, I'm just really not into this kind of weird fuzzy edge. Soft feathered edge, yes. Soothing watercolour. Only I can't soothe watercolour. Can I soothe watercolour? I don't have them. Can't see the watercolour on a plain background, so I'm wondering if it's... Can I do this on here? Oh, it's like a... It's a kind of blender. Yeah, I can kind of see what it's doing. Let's zoom in. Let's zoom in on this white patch. You zoom in, you can see how this is so nice. It looks almost like genuine watercolour. So it's kind of, what is it? It's feathering out in all directions, this little blender. So on small, possibly. Let's make it bigger. Yeah, so you can pull with it. So you can push and pull. I think some push and pull, maybe diddling into doing what I do. I tend to, when I get brushes like these, blenders like these, I tend to kind of do tiny little circles. I find that tends to really help blend. But I've now made my nice smooth clouds looking somewhat splodgy just there. Okay. I'm not too enamoured with that. Now I've got a transparent water brush. Let's bring this up. Is that oh, okay. Now that is weird. How do I define that? Yeah. It's like glass, like layered glass. It's like if I put a piece of blue coloured glass down and then I put another same colour blue over the top, that's what I would get. And then another one, and then another one, and then another one, and another one. I'd still get the maximum amount of intensity of that colour. It wouldn't get darker because it is opaque. For those that want to look into that, you can look into that. There's some scientific reason behind it. I'm a lighting designer by trade, well, what I was trained for, so I'm very into that sort of thing. Right, what have we got here? This is a smooth watercolour. Yes, it's smooth. No different to any paintbrush though. Watercolour brush. Oh, okay. So you got a slightly streaky brush. Yeah, should have learned. I've got to stop doing this whole over the top. Blending is not happening. Watery. Oh, now I can see that. Let's make that bigger and I can show you what it is I'm looking at there. You see how we've got this kind of edge to it. It's not so obvious actually when I make it bigger. Let's make it smaller. Can I see this here and there, and you can see it on this part as well. You've got an edge. If you put slightly too much water on your brush and you've got watercolor, you get your color in the middle of the line that you've painted, but the amount of water in the brush will also push a lot of the pigment to the edges, so you end up with like a darker edge on either side of your line, and then your color down the middle. Water is very, very good at pushing watercolor pigment away from where you want it to be. Which is kind of stupid really when you think about it, because it's called watercolor. You think it's there to work together, when actually the whole theory around how watercolor actually works is actually the water is constantly repelling the watercolor pigment, not binding with it. So this is an uneven layering brush. Oh, something else that's nice and fuzzy. That looks more like an airbrush. I'd say that looks like an airbrush. Skip over that one. Wet bleed blender. Alright, let's do that and then we'll have a look at this. Okay, so it's like the blender we had earlier, but with slightly more defined feathering at the edges. That's fine. That's quite nice. We go back to our clouds. So that's our clouds. So we found something that we like so far, is the watercolours. Let's go back to our pastels. Right, an area I spend a lot of time working with is pastels. Right, let's create a new layer. We're in this weird colour. Okay, so the first layer you put down, obviously you've got the texture. Let's make this bigger. The more you layer over the top, the smoother that is. That's pretty much how pastel works. The more pastel you lay down, the more it fills the grain, the smoother it looks. Okay. I'm going to add another colour. We're not really getting blending. In fact, I've just managed to wipe out an entire purple with a light green. Okay. So that's our chalk. Then we want a crayon. Ooh, that's speckly. Oh, I feel like I'm applying pastel to leather. Oh, that's weird. Stick another colour over the top. Okay. Noise. Well, that's a bit better. This is slightly more realistic texture, shall we say. You can see there how that is. That's quite nice. It is responding to my pen pressure, so obviously the harder I go, the more it's laying down. Then we have pastel, which is literally as it says. That's the colour we can see. Slightly rougher texture. And charcoal. Okay, let's not do them that big. Oops. Okay. So charcoal's actually going down really lightly. I'm having to really work at it to get more layers down. So if you're quite heavy-handed, actually, that would be quite useful. Okay. Right, so that's all of the ones in pastel, and also we've covered our watercolour. That's where I'm going to leave it for today with this program. My thoughts are basically along the lines of, yes, it seems to be a good program. Ooh, sorry, yawning, not getting much sleep with the heat still here. I can see it has a lot of potential for comic artists and manga artists. It has a lot of stuff for comics already pre-built in, which is great, as you can see. But at the same time, you know, for artists, yeah, and I know that they've touted this, that it's a multi-use program and that artists can use it as well. I would say it's definitely not for fine art. It just doesn't have that sort of capacity. It does have some nice tools. I would definitely recommend having a play with the watercolours. They have, you know, there is some potential there, as you can see from the clouds that I've painted today. But otherwise, yeah, definitely give it a go and have a play with it. If you're interested in doing comics, definitely have a go at this. It comes with so many nice features for your framing, for your line art. It actually, and I know this, and I haven't done it in this because I haven't got any line art to import at the moment. But it can take line art and it can colorize it for you. You can also give it tips, so you can put blobs of colour down and say this is the kind of colour scheme that you're looking for certain characters and certain parts on characters, and then ask it to colorize, and it will take that and go, right, oh cool, okay, so that's what you want, and it will colorize. But it's great if you just want to go, right, I'm going to throw in some line art of a character and go, right, colorize, see what it comes up with. I've tried it a few times. I've not created a video of it because it's not really applicable to fine art and it's not really something I'm interested in, but it was good fun. I had quite a good laugh at some of the colour combinations it was coming up for some of the characters I drew, especially one of my cats. So yeah, have a go. The link to the trial is down below, and if you have a go, leave a message in the comments and let us know what you thought. So that'll be all for today, and we'll see you next time. Bye folks.